Hi, I'm Jeff Garrison. Welcome to the Growing Leaders Podcast, powered by Results on Purpose. This is where we share our observations and bits of leadership wisdom. Today, we're going to walk through the 4 stages of growth that we see companies go through. Of course, when we begin working with a new client at Results on Purpose, we don't spend a lot of time diagnosing these stages or the stage they're in. We just assume that they're in stage 1 every time. Not because the companies we work with aren't successful. Many of them are doing real revenue, have great people, and have been in business for years. But because in our experience, there's almost always foundational work to do. Clarity to build, boundaries to set, infrastructure that hasn't been put in place yet. And until that work is done, everything else is harder than it needs to be. So the 4-stage journey begins there. Now let's look at what all 4 stages look like.
Welcome to the Growing Leaders Podcast, powered by Results on Purpose. If you're a small or mid-sized business owner or part of a leadership team, this podcast is built for you. We share ideas and stories to help you grow into the leader your business needs.
Welcome back. Let's start with a core principle, and that is that the growth of the business is preceded by the growth of its leaders. That principle is at the heart of everything I'm going to share today. So each stage isn't just a description of where the company is at. It's also a description of where the leader is at. More accurately, where are they spending their time? So as we go through these 4 stages, I want you to consider 2 things. First, what stage is your company actually operating in right now? And keep in mind, it may feel like you're in more than one stage at the same time. And second, what do your leaders need to learn or improve upon to move to the next stage? Stage 1 is the tactical stage. It's where almost every company starts, and it's where I see a lot of teams spending more time than they realize. In stage 1, leaders are in the weeds. There are fires everywhere, perhaps. Things get done, but not consistently. There are key people with no backups, and if they left tomorrow, you'd be in trouble. And there's a constant pull on senior leaders to stop what they're doing all the time and go solve the next problem. So here's what makes stage 1 so hard to recognize from the inside. Leaders in this stage are feeling strategic. They're in back-to-back meetings. They're making decisions all day. There's lots of motion. But when you look at what's actually happening, most of that energy is going towards solving the next problem, putting out the next fire. That's tactical work. And there's an important difference between tactical and strategic thinking, one that becomes much clearer as we move forward. So why is it hard to escape stage 1? I use this analogy sometimes with the teams I work with. And if you don't know where your next meal is coming from or how you're going to fill up your gas tank, you can't think about your education or how you're going to develop the next skill to move your career forward. You just can't. The stress of immediate survival collapses your thinking. It creates tunnel vision. And that's what happens to leaders in businesses that are stuck in stage 1. The constant tactical demands make it genuinely difficult to think broadly or long-term. This isn't a character flaw. It's not a talent issue. It's just what chronic operational stress does to people. The solution isn't to try harder. It's to build the infrastructure that frees people up. And this is where the leader growth piece comes in. Because even in the middle of all that chaos, there's real growth happening if the leader is doing the right work. The first thing leaders are learning in stage 1 is how to create clarity for their teams, specifically clarity about the outcomes each person owns and what it looks like when they're nailing it. It sounds simple though, but it's not. Most leaders haven't been taught how to define success that precisely. Learning to do it and do it consistently is one of the most important skills a leader can develop. The second thing leaders are learning is how to set boundaries, not in a rigid, bureaucratic way, but in a way that gives their team a clear sense of when they should pull the leader into a conversation and when they should handle it themselves. Without those boundaries, everything escalates. Every problem becomes the leader's problem, and they never get out of stage one. These two skills, clarity about outcomes and boundaries around escalation, are what start to create the conditions for the next stage. The company can't grow past where the leader is. What does it take to move out of stage one? And what does the next stage actually look like? That's where it gets interesting. Stage two is about sharpening strategy. It doesn't happen automatically with time. And what I see shift in the teams I work with is this. Enough process gets built that things don't fall apart without a senior leader in the room. People have clarity around what they're responsible for and what success looks like. Accountability starts to function. People start making more decisions on their own. They get more confident. So the leader stops being the answer to every question. And here's what that frees up: mental space. When leaders aren't spending the majority of their time solving tactical problems, they start to actually see the business. They can think a little more broadly, a little further down the road. They begin to experience, not just understand, the difference between tactical and strategic thinking. I want to be precise about what I mean by stage two, because this is where teams sometimes misread what's happening. In stage two, you're not executing a proven strategy necessarily. You're learning what your strategy should be. As you succeed and fail at things inside the business, try things, see what works, see what doesn't, you're sharpening your strategic theory. You're developing real clarity on how to win in the market. What is your differentiation? Who's your real customer? What do you need to be truly excellent at? Those aren't questions you answer in a conference room. You answer them through experience and then in a conference room. And really, stage two is just about sharpening this stuff up. This is where it happens. The leader growth in stage two is significant, and it looks different from stage one. First, leaders are learning what strategic questions to ask. Having the time to think strategically isn't enough. You have to develop the instinct for what questions actually matter at a strategic level. That's a learned skill. And the leaders I see thrive in this stage are the ones who get curious, who start asking questions they weren't asking before. Second, leaders are learning to think differently about who handles things, not just how things get handled. In stage one, the question is usually, how do we solve this problem? In stage two, the question starts to become, who is the right person to solve this? And do they have what they need to do it? That's a meaningful shift in how a leader thinks. And third, leaders are starting to develop if-then thinking. They're thinking about cause and effect. If we do this, then what happens? If the market shifts this way, then what's our response? The kind of thinking, anticipating downstream consequences, is what separates strategic leaders from tactical ones. And stage two is where it starts to develop. Once you've built that tactical foundation and sharpened your strategic thinking through real experience, now you're ready for stage three. And this is the stage most companies are eager to jump to. The challenge is you have to earn it. You have to go through stage one and stage two. Stage three is the scaling stage. And to really get here, two things need to be true. First, you have to be tactically solid. Your business isn't going to break when you start moving faster or doing things in greater volume. Second, you need a sharpened strategic theory. You know how to win. You know what to scale. When a team is genuinely operating in stage three, something important shifts. Leaders can observe from a distance. They can see what's working and what isn't from a higher level without getting pulled back in. They can make improvements, learn as they go, and keep growing without the wheels coming off. Now, stages 2 and 3 sort of overlap. There aren't always clear lines. What I often see as teams scale is that they surface new gaps in their strategy. Maybe the product offering needs to narrow. Maybe the target market needs to sharpen. Maybe something that worked at smaller volume doesn't hold up at scale. When that happens, the right move is to step back into strategy sharpening and then return to scaling once that work is done. It's not a setback, it's the process. It's how things should work. By the way, it can happen really fast. It can happen in a meeting or two, and we make the adjustments. The growth required of leaders in stage 3 is some of the most creative and demanding work that they'll do. Leaders in this stage are learning to think creatively about growth, and that means moving beyond the default answer of adding headcount. The leaders who scale well are the ones who start asking different questions. How do we improve productivity? Where can we get more efficient? What tools exist that we're not using? What could we outsource that doesn't need to live inside the business? These are all great questions, and that kind of thinking about capacity is what separates companies that scale profitably from the ones that just get bigger and more expensive. Leaders in stage 3 are also learning to make decisions about what to scale, and sometimes what to quit. Not everything that works at small volume deserves to be scaled. Some things need to be pruned so the best things can grow. That's a really hard decision for a lot of leaders, especially founders who are attached to everything they've built. But learning to make that call is part of what stage 3 demands. And underneath it all, the leader is learning that scale is not about doing more, it's about doing the right things better, faster, and more efficiently than before. You can get here to stage 3 too early. You can force it too early. And what I observe when teams try to scale before they've genuinely worked through stage 1 and stage 2 is that scaling becomes expensive and inefficient. Labor efficiency suffers, for example, because the operational foundation wasn't solid. Marketing and sales spend climbs because the strategic theory isn't clear, it's unfocused. The product or service offering is too broad maybe, and resources just get spread too thin. The lessons that could have been learned more cheaply in the earlier stages end up costing significantly more at scale. Now, if you've built the tactical foundation, sharpened your strategy, and learned to scale efficiently, there's one more stage, and this is the one that determines whether all the work pays off the way it deserves to. Stage 4 is about value maximization. Scaling costs money. So when you're in stage 3, you're investing in people, in systems, in infrastructure. Costs go up. Margins can compress. That's expected. That's what investment looks like. But there comes a point where growth starts to normalize. And when that happens, the question shifts from how do we grow to how do we maximize the value of what we've built. This is stage 4, and we're going to use some big words. Perhaps they apply to small and medium-sized businesses, not just enterprise-sized companies. In stage 4, the focus moves to return on invested capital and making the company as valuable as possible for the owners and potentially the market. Optimizing margins without sacrificing growth and building the kind of business that has real, lasting enterprise value. The leader growth in stage 4 is about mastery, specifically mastery of the metrics that tell you whether the business is actually becoming more valuable. We've been operating since stage 1 with certain sets of metrics, and those have evolved over time, and we've introduced some of these metrics earlier, but in stage 4, we want to go deep on a few things like contribution margin, understanding profitability of individual products, services, or customer segments, not just the business overall. And we'll be tracking labor efficiency ratio, how much revenue the business generates relative to its labor investment. And need to be looking at management efficiency ratio. And man, this is one of those really huge levers. How effectively is the leadership layer performing relative to the size of the organization? In stage 4, companies are also developing sophistication around business acquisition cost. understanding what it actually costs to bring on a new customer or client, and targeted marketing spend, making sure every marketing dollar is tied to a specific outcome, not just activity. So these aren't metrics for the sake of having metrics for sure. They're the more sophisticated dashboard that tells a leadership team whether the value of the business is actually growing and where to focus to make it grow faster. And learning to lead with these numbers is what stage 4 requires. So this is why the prior stages matter when we get to stage 4. You can cut expenses in earlier stages and improve margins without ever having truly scaled. And a lean, profitable business is fantastic. It's not a bad outcome at all. And you may choose not to scale in a big way. But I do see what happens with companies that shortcut the earlier stages is that they leave a lot of value on the table later on. All the years of work, everything that's been built, the full return on that only comes when you've learned to grow the business efficiently and then maximized what you've built. Stage 4 is where it becomes real, but only if the foundation underneath is solid. I mentioned earlier that the stages overlap, and even in stage 4, tactical issues still surface. That's always going to be true. The question isn't whether tactical problems exist. The question is, are they being handled at the right level? Are senior leaders spending a small slice of their time on tactical issues and the majority of their time on the things that drive real value? Of course, that's the goal. So just to say it again, we're always going to have some tactical issues. We're always going to be fiddling with strategy stuff. We're always going to be tweaking our scaling, but we're going to spend less and less time at each of those stages as senior leaders and more at the stage we're in to maximize our value. So let's bring all this together. Why do the 4 stages matter? Again, the growth of the business is preceded by the growth of its leaders. That's not just some tagline or something. It's what I see play out in every organization to work with. Each stage isn't just a phase the company goes through. It's a phase the leadership team goes through. And the company can only go as far as the leadership team has grown. Again, in stage 1, the leadership team is learning to create clarity and set boundaries. In stage 2, they're learning to think strategically, what questions to ask, who should handle what, and how to think in if-then terms. In stage 3, they're learning to scale creatively and make hard decisions about what to grow and what to let go of. And in stage 4, they're mastering the metrics that tell them whether all of that work is building something truly valuable. The stages build on each other by design. Moving through them too fast doesn't save time. Stephen Covey wrote in The 7 Habits that fast is slow and slow is fast. And he was talking about people, but I think that applies to many, many things. And in business, slow is fast in this case. Working our way through the stages at the right speed, not necessarily slowly, but at the right speed, is the fastest way to get what you want out of the business. So when we take it too fast, the cost is often more in time and in money and in the full return on everything that's been invested. Now, let me just say again, companies might be in multiple stages, or they may think they're in a further stage than they are because one department or one leader is ready for that stage when another leader or their department is still stuck behind. But we need the whole leadership team to be in the same stage together. So if you're not sure about what stage you're in, that might be the case. So let's close this out. Here's what I want to leave you with today. What stage is your company actually operating in right now? And what do your leaders need to learn or improve upon to move to the next one? Not the stage you're working toward, not the stage your revenue or team size might suggest. Where are your senior leaders actually spending their time? And what growth is the next stage asking of them? That honest look is usually where the real work begins. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.